Okay, so we're going to go into the chapter 8 stuff, talking about units of measurement. And if you kind of thumb through the pages just a little bit and go to page 29, this starts on like page 23 of those notes. I want to go to the formula sheet for a minute to explain something to you. There are different ways of converting stuff. We use unit multipliers to do that. Sometimes that might make it seem a little more difficult, but what it's good for is knowing if you should have divided or multiplied, and it sets it up that way. But it kind of relates to some old concepts that we learned a while back. So each of these things make what's called a rate. So we know 12 inches make a foot, right? Yep. You don't have to memorize these things, but it will be given to you. 3 feet make a yard. 5,280 feet equal a mile. So if you can write these as rates. And it creates, we use these rates to create unit multipliers to help us convert. So I'm going to teach it that way. If you happen to know how to convert some of these without using a unit multiplier, that is okay, as long as I can see your work. Okay. So if a rate in this case would be like saying 12 inches over 1 foot. You kind of can create a fraction which creates a rate or a unit multiplier. And so we could also say, you could switch that up and say 1 foot over 12 inches. So basically you create this rate that it means the same thing. It's just that they have different units on the top and the bottom. For the length still, we would say this one, you could say 3 feet over 1 yard, or flip that around and say 1 yard over 3 feet. And then I'm sure you picked it up, 5,280 feet over 1 mile, or we'd say 1 mile over 5,280 feet. And so that's really all a rate is. This is, like I said, for the lengths. Let's go over here and do the weight. We could say 16 ounces. I put a little line through my Z, so that's what that means. Over 1 pound. They usually use the LB, and I usually write it in cursive because my L sometimes look like a 1. Or we would say 1 pound over 16 ounces, right? The other one is a thing that we use often is 2,000 pounds over 1 ton, or 1 ton over 2,000 pounds. And then we have time. Just do this time. We can do all of those. 60 seconds over 1 minute. 1 minute over 60 seconds. Sometimes you might put SEC, but we know that there's 60 minutes in 1 hour, or 1 hour in 60 minutes. So it's just setting them up like fractions. I'm sure you picked up on already, but let's go ahead and just do all of them. 24 hours in a day, or 1 day in 24 hours. And then the last one, we know there's 7 days in a week. I'm going to put WK for week. Push this up, gotta move my thing out of the way. Or 1 week in 7 days. Capacity. How many of you ever learned like that? There's like a cheater way to remember some of our capacity. It's like ounces, cups, pints. Do any of you remember doing a big G and putting 4 Q's in it? Did anybody learn that like that? I'm going to set these up and then I'm going to just show you that, because honestly, sometimes I even refer to it in my real life. If I'm like, oh, what is that? How many quarts are in a gallon? I don't remember. But so 8 ounces equal 1 cup, or 1 cup and 8 ounces. 2 cups in 1 pint, or 1 pint in 2 cups. I just put C for cups this time. Oh, I did the wrong thing. Pint. Yeah, I did the right thing. 1 pint and 2 cups. Now we have 2 pints equal 1 quart, or 1 quart equals 2 pints. 4 quarts in a gallon, or 1 gallon over 4 quarts. So these are all the different unit multipliers you could use, or we call them rates. It's just the 2 units that equal each other, and they call that a rate. We kind of learned that a while back, but we didn't apply it quite like this. The capacity one, I do want to show you this. Whenever I taught public school, I taught this, and I had never seen it before, and it helped me learn it a little bit better after I taught it like this. So I'm going to go ahead and just show you. I'm going to turn it over on the back. But like sometimes, we work with gallons and cups a lot in our normal life, but they would draw a big G. It seems kind of elementary, but whatever is a good memory device, in my opinion, works. And then they would draw 4 Q's inside of our G. And then we would draw 2 P's inside of our Q's. It's just a visual of kind of what we just did, if you don't use those unit multipliers. And then you would draw 2 C's in each P, because there's 2 cups in a pint. So I don't know, it's kind of fun whether you use that or not. It is what it is. I actually do use it sometimes when I can't remember, or if I get a quart and a pint mixed up or something in my head, or I don't know. How many of you watch Saturday Night Live? Does anybody in here watch it? Okay. There's a really funny skit about our conversions between the metric system and our English system, and it was just so hilarious. I need to find it and show it to you, because as I was writing all that, I was just almost laughing because it was just so funny. Our system is complex, kind of, right? Like 2,000 pounds is a ton, right? They just decided to call 2,000 pounds a ton. So I don't expect you to memorize those. You will be given those, and you don't have to memorize it, but just know how to use it as we're going forward, okay? Maybe you know some of them and you've memorized some of them, but. Okay, so let's turn and actually get into the lecture now. So if we're talking about units of measurement, first we're really just going to talk about length and weight. And that's why it's grade over here. So a conversion factor is just a rate. So that's what we just talked about. It's just a rate used to convert units of measure to another unit. And I'll go ahead and say of measure. So a rate is just used to convert one unit to a whole different unit. And I'll show you how that's done. Some of you may have thought, well, why can't I just multiply times 12 or divide by 12? Technically, that's what you're doing when we do this. And like I said, I'm okay if you do it like that. But I am supposed to teach you unit multipliers. So that's what we're going to do today, okay? So if I were to convert 5 feet to inches, I want you to think of it sort of like a tic-tac-toe, or, like 2 lines, okay? And we're going to say I have 5 feet. And if I want to convert it to inches, I will put inches over feet right here. And this really helps us decide if we're supposed to multiply or divide. And the reason we do it like this, I'm trying to convert to inches, so it needs to stay in the top, whatever unit it is that you're wanting it to stay as. And I want feet down here because remember how you could like cross reduce stuff back when it was numbers? Well, you can reduce units. So it's kind of like it cancels out the feet unit. So I would have 12 inches in 1 foot. Remember how we did that over here? That's how I know that I put the 12 over 1 because of those units. So that tells us that we're really just multiplying 5 times 12. So in your calculator, you can do that. And that'd be like saying 60 inches. Sometimes you'll see it like 60 with like two little, like a quotation looking thing up there. If I'm going to convert inches to feet, this would be like saying I have 29 inches. So let's do our little perpendicular lines, I guess is what you could call it. So I'm going inches to feet. So I have to put the inches in the bottom. So really it is like dividing. So we could say that's like saying my inches cancel out. And you could put 29 over 12 feet. So you could answer it in the reduced fraction form like that in WebAssign. Remember, if they don't give you rounding instructions, you can't turn it into a decimal as much as you may want to. And I feel like some problems are different than others. Sometimes they give you rounding instructions and sometimes they don't. So this is a reminder what we learned way back in Unit 1 about all those things with fractions and decimals. If you turned it into a decimal, then the decimal form of that would be like saying 2.416 repeating. That 6 repeats forever and ever and ever, which really isn't super rational when you're talking about an application of a measurement. Or we could turn it into a mixed number. Do you guys remember how to do that? Let's go back to our 29 over 12. To turn it into a mixed number, you would do your second key, and then that x10 to the nth key. You can see how it has may have been a little while since you had to do that. And then click enter. Those are the keystrokes to do that. And that would be 2 and 5 over 12 feet. So if they don't give you rounding instructions, you're really going to have to answer it like this. Let's think about what this could mean though. 2 and 5 over 12. Just to take it just a step further for everybody. How many inches are in a foot? 12. So this could really indicate 2 feet because that's the whole part. What would the 5 indicate?
5 inches.
5 inches. Yeah, so you could even think of it like that. So man, it seems like there's so many different ways to answer that. Unless they tell you to split it apart into different measurements, which I don't think they do. I need to go look at the assignment. You can either answer it like this or like this, unless they give you rounding instructions. All the different things you might see in different types of problems. Your application problems are probably going to ask you to round or something, or turn it into the 2 different measurements to be most accurate. Okay, let's go to the yards one. So sometimes you need to convert it, like there's an in-betweener conversion. I don't have here yards straight to miles, do I? But I do have like feet. I guess like she does it where she gives you a conversion of yard. Oh yeah, nope. But we do have feet, and then we have how many feet are in a mile. So we need to kind of work backwards. So we're going to say 2850 yards. And then we need to think about, what do we know? How many yards are in a foot? Do we know that? So we know we're going to have an in-betweener. So let's kind of come over here, and we know we're going to have to end in miles. So I'll probably have to turn yards to feet and then feet to miles in this one. So we know that there are 3 feet in 1 yard. And then we're going to have to say in 1 mile, there are 5,280 feet, because what we want to happen is to cancel the yards and cancel the feet, right? So that we're left with just the miles. So this would be like saying 2,850 times 3 times 1. Type that into your calculator, and that's 8,550. And then 1 times 5,280 is 5,280. And so then you would want to see if you could reduce that, you know, in your calculator, 8550 over 5280. And it reduces a little bit, but it still kind of leaves it as an improper fraction. So in terms of about root of 2, this is a big fat 176. In terms of application purposes, like that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? You can tell it's probably a little more than a mile. You can turn it into a decimal if they give you rounding instructions. So like say they tell you in decimal form to round to 2 digits. That would be like saying 1.62 miles, right? Or maybe we need to turn that into a mixed number to make it more accurate without rounding. So we would go do that in our calculator. And it would be like 1 and 109 over 176 miles. It's still kind of a weird looking fraction, but that would be, these two are the most accurate forms. This one we rounded. All different things that could happen in any kind of problem when we're converting. So if you struggled with rounding or knowing if you should round or keep it in fraction form, hopefully you're going to be reviewed on that. Remember, these are exact forms. And when you, if you had to round it, that's slightly different. So they would have to give you rounding instructions in order to answer it in a decimal form. Okay, so then we need to go miles to inches, but we don't know how many inches are in a mile, but we do know how many inches are in a foot, right? So we have a 12 inches in a foot middle conversion again. So sometimes you have to do 3 things. So this says 15 miles. And we're going to turn it into feet because we know how many feet are in a mile, right? Then we can turn it into inches in the end. So this is our goal unit. Each time we're going from our starting unit to our goal unit is the last up top in the right. So you know that you're going to have inches down here to cancel. Did that wrong. Did I do that wrong? Yeah, it'd be miles. Yeah, we need to cancel this one out. That's why I was like, I knew I did that wrong. And then this, we have to have feet to cancel those out. I was working not the same direction as my eyes. My brain was working different. So how many feet are in a mile? That's where we can start working with that. We can go find that unit rate conversion that we had over here, or you're really just working with it here. So that's 5,280 feet in 1 mile. And then we know that there's 12 inches in 1 foot. And so really you can see how the miles cancel. And we're just multiplying those numbers across because that would be over 1. So it's going to be a big number. Think about inches are a very small measurement. Miles are big measurements, right? It's a bigger span of space. So it really is this big 950,400 inches. So that obviously is one that doesn't round. I'm not going to, I guess, box out all of these. All the different types of answers you can get with these problems. Okay, we're going from pounds to tons. Let me reply. I guess my neighbor's dog is out. The neighbor texted me and my husband. Okay, sorry. So we're going pounds to tons. Do we have a conversion of that?
Yep.
Pounds to tons. Yep, right here. We know that there's 2,000 pounds in 1 ton. So we're going to say 3,200 pounds And we can go straight to tons because we do have a pounds and tons comparison. So we know in one ton, there are 2,000 pounds. So in this case, you could have thought, yeah, I could just divide by 2,000. Sometimes it's not as clear for some people to know if you're dividing or multiplying. So we'd put 3,200 over 2,000 and then reduce that. You can plug that into your calculator. And let's just keep practicing it together. So you may be able to reduce without your calculator. So you could say like 8 over 5 tons. Well, that doesn't make a whole lot of applicable sense, or at least it doesn't to me. So you could either turn that into a mixed number and call that 1 3/5 of a ton. Or if they give you rounding instructions, this one, for instance, actually was an ending decimal. So we would just say 1.6 tons. So I know that those are all looking kind of different, but those are different forms of the same number. Decimal form and fraction form. They have 3.5 tons to ounces, or tons, 3.5 pounds to ounces, and we do have pounds and ounces right here. That's a direct conversion. So we could say 3.5 pounds to ounces. And so if you come up here, we know that there's 16 ounces, so that would be in the top part, over 1 pound. So in this case, you would just be multiplying. I know that it's a mixed number. I would keep it as a mixed number, or in this case, you could turn it to a decimal if you wanted. But remember, your calculator can do that for you. You can hit your second and your fraction key, and you can set up that mixed number in your calculator and type in 3 1/2. And then just take that times 16. And so that's just an even 56 ounces. Okay, we're going to come back to these application problems, and I'm going to show you how really you're just doing the same thing with time and capacity. Okay, that way we can come back and do application all at once. Sound good? So skip that page for just a minute, and now let's go do the time and capacity. Time is probably something you do often, like hours and days or whatever. You may convert time just in your daily life for whatever reason. Quarts and gallons and stuff. If you drink a lot of water, maybe you do that a lot. I used to do it quite a bit until I got a specific cup, and then I just knew how many of those I needed to drink. So it is, if you're on a health journey, you might do a lot of the capacity anyways. But in this case, we're doing quarts to gallons. Did we have a quarts to gallons? We do, right? So you can go there and look, and so we can do our little T basically, and we can say we're taking 10 quarts and we want to turn it into gallons. So I want my quarts to cancel out, so that's why we do that. We want it to end in gallons. So I know that there are 4 quarts in 1 gallon. So really it's just like taking 10 divided by 4, right? And if you reduce that, that would be like a 5 over 2 gallons. But in all application purposes, you wouldn't probably end it like that. I'm going to type in 10 over 4, and it would say 5 over 2, but you would either need to turn that into a mixed number, which would be like saying 2.5 gallons for that to make sense, or decimal form would be ending, and that'd be like 2.5 gallons. All the different forms that represent the same thing, just in a different way. Sometimes we get to do a lot of in-between conversions. And this one is that we're going like the smallest measurement to the biggest measurement. So you're going to have all these ounce, cups, pints, quarts conversions all in between. So let's just build that as we go. So I know I'm going to take 95 ounces, And I know I can turn ounces into cups, right? Let's just go from top to bottom. I know I can turn ounces into cups, and let's just work our way down. So let's do cups up here and ounces, because I want to turn this into cups. So I know that in 1 cup, there's 8 ounces. Well, then I want to turn those cups to pints. So I'm going to put pint right here. So notice I'm just kind of going down this direction, right? So if I want to turn cups to pints, I have to put cups in the bottom, and I know there's 2 cups and 1 pint. And now I want to turn that pint into a quart, right? So we're going to put quart over pint. And how many? There's 2 pints in 1 quart. Lots of 2s on that one. And I still have another one to finally get to gallons, because if I'm at a quart and I want to turn quarts into gallons, I would say my gallons are top, because remember, that's what I'm wanting to get to. So I put the quart on the bottom. There are 4 quarts in 1 gallon. So that's kind of a long one. And it almost, it's just working this direction, and this is what's in top. I'm turning ounces to cups, to pints, to quarts, to gallons, and then you just put its other unit multiplier below it, if that helps when you have a lot of in-betweeners. So if you multiply all that across, it would be like saying 95 gallons over 8 times 2 times 2 times 4 is 128. So this is how each thing cancels as you work, and leaving us with gallons. So if you type that in your calculator, 95 over 128 is obviously, you can't reduce that. You would either need to turn that into a fraction and have instructions to round. So that would be like saying close to, so like 0.74, about 3/4. Would you say that that's really close to saying 0.75 gallons? Think about application point purposes. Wouldn't 1/3 of a gallon make a little bit more sense? So it's kind of close to 3/4 of a gallon. This would be the most accurate. Actually, the fraction right here would be the most accurate we could ever get to, really, in this case. Can't turn that into a mixed number because it's not a bigger number on top, right? Can't reduce it. It doesn't reduce to a pretty little fraction like this, but we can turn it into a decimal, and 0.74 is really close to like 0.75 if we were to rounded it up instead of rounding it down like the rounding instructions indicate, which is really close to 3/4 of a gallon, right? So that would be just an approximate, but this would be probably, they probably give you rounding instructions on that one. Okay, now we're going from gallons to pints. So we're going a little bit backwards. So we're going to have a quart in between us. So you can just look at your list here and kind of look to see where you're going and see what's in between. You have a quart in between it. So you have 2.5 gallons over quarts. And then we can get to our pints. So let's go look at what we know. We know that there are 4 quarts in 1 gallon. So we're just working our way back up. And then we know that there is 1 quart, so this would have to be quarts, in 2 pints, so 2 over 1. So you're just multiplying this one across. See how your gallons cancel out, your quarts cancel out. So 2.5 times 4 times 2 is 20 pints. It looks like points when I abbreviate it like that. Days to hours, you know, this one might make the most sense to you to just multiply or divide, because you probably do this a lot. How many hours are in 5.5 days? You would probably know to multiply times 24, right? But if you use a unit rate, let's show what that would look like, just so that maybe it helps you understand the unit rates on the ones that you don't use every day. So we know that we're turning it into hours. And there's 24 hours in one day. So you're just multiplying 5.5 times 24, which is 132 hours. Seconds to hours. So we don't really know how many total seconds. You could probably figure that out really quick. There are in a full hour by taking 60 times 60, right? But if we use these unit multipliers, what unit is between second and hours that we commonly use? Minutes. And if you look up there, that you can see that you are going from seconds to hours, and you can see that minutes is in between them. Oh, sorry, you can't see that. It went from seconds to hours, and you can see minutes are in between them. So go look at those units and see what's in between if you aren't real sure on one that you're not as familiar with. But if I have 17 to 20 seconds, I know that in 1 minute there's 60 seconds, and in 1 hour there's 60 minutes. So it's like you're dividing by 60 twice. Or if you multiply those together, which I'll do that for my work purposes, 60 times 60 is 3,600. So let's type that into our calculator. 17 to 20. My writing got a little wonky there. That's a 2. Those are 2 different 2's written 2 different ways. And so if you were to reduce that, that'd be like saying 287 over 60. Again, for like application purposes, we're never going to say 287 over 60 hours, right? Like that doesn't make a lot of sense in real life application. So you would turn that either into a mixed number or a decimal by saying second and hit your conversion key for you. So that would be like saying 447 over 60 hours. Or if you turned it to a decimal, you would be given rounding instructions. And you might say like 4.78 hours. Or, 4.878 with a repeating 3. But that would be if you rounded. Rounded to 2 digits. Bless you. Okay, and then the last one before the application type problems. If we're going seconds to weeks, we got a lot of different measurements between, right? We have seconds and we're trying to go all the way to weeks. So we're making a really small measurement into a bigger span of time. A week is 7 whole days, right? So we have like 1, 2, 3 different in between things that we have to do. So we have 1,814,400 seconds. And we'll probably have to turn that into minutes, right? And then let's turn minutes into hours, and then we can turn hours into days. So I know that in 1 minute, there is 60 seconds. In 1 hour, there is 60 minutes. So these should always be the same so that they cancel out the bottom diagonal, like going to the right. And then I know that there are 24 hours in 1 day. So you're actually dividing by 60, and 24, or you multiply all those numbers together, which would be a really big number. So I think it actually ends up being an even number. So let's just type it in and we'll just say, you could say times 1 over 60 is basically what you would do if you don't want to simplify it as you go, times another 1 over 60 times a 1 over 25 or 24, not 25. So that's 21. And I forgot one, didn't I? I'm supposed to go to weeks. So if that's 21 weeks, what did I forget to do? Days to weeks. I was stopping at days. This would be like 21 days, which you could divide by what to make? 7. Yeah, if you did it like me and you messed up. Whoops. So let me go finish that. We need to go weeks, so days. So there's divide by 7. So divide by 7, same thing would be 3 weeks. I just forgot one. I got tired of setting up all those unit multipliers apparently, because there's so many in between. There we go. So you kind of see how those days canceled the days and we ended in weeks like we were supposed to. So we're going to stop there today. We'll do some application problems when we get back on Thursday. That way we can spend more time on this and it's not like we're never going to see this again. But the steps that you learned are the same no matter what kind of unit you're working with. Whether you're working with length or weight or time or capacity, you can work these the very same way. Sometimes you do have those middle measurements if you're converting something really small to a lot bigger and you don't have in-between conversions. So you have to kind of make your way down the list and set up 2 or 3 middle conversions basically. But we'll do some application. And I will just state again, it's really okay if you understand, oh, I can just divide by 12 to turn that into feet or something. I can multiply times 12 to turn it into inches, and that is fine. Just make sure you're showing that work, how you're doing it. There's many things that I just do that way more naturally than this, but some of them you might not, like, you might be like, how do I turn ounces into gallons or gallons into ounces? There's a lot of in-between things that maybe you don't really do that one every day. And so that would be a good opportunity to at least try to learn how to set up these unit conversions like we're teaching in this chapter 8 stuff. So it's a good idea to practice it, especially on the ones you know how to do. That way it helps you with the ones that maybe you might struggle with on those conversions a little bit more later. Okay, it gives you a method that will take you through easy ones to hard ones. All right. I'm gonna stop recording.